I knew Eli Dawson for 30 years. 30 years of watching that man shrink into himself like a fence post rotting from the inside out.
After Martha died in that fire, Eli stopped being a man and started being a ghost. He fed his horses, 15 years alone out there. No visitors, no church on Sundays, no reason to shave or smile.
That November evening, Eli rode to town for winter supplies, salt, flour, ammunition. Same list every year, same empty saddlebag going home.
But on the road back, something pulled him off his path.
Inside that barn, Virgil Meeks was running his circus. Stolen horses, contraband whiskey, and at the end of the line, a young woman with a burlap or sack and her hands tied to ride with rope. She pauses, linked the crowing. Eli told me later he heard Martha's voice right then, clear as Sunday bells. She said, "Kindness does not ask permission, Eli."
He raised his hand and offered $2. $2 for a human life, the lowest bid possible. Virgil laughed. His men laughed. They thought the old rancher was a fool buying damaged goods. They let him have her for the price of a meal.
Eli cut her ropes, lifted her onto his horse, and rode into the night without a word. He did not remove the sack from her head during the ride home. Not out of cruelty. She was shaking so hard he was afraid any sudden move would shatter her completely. When he finally pulled that sack off her head, he saw a young woman with tangled brown hair and eyes that could cut through you like a blade. Those eyes were not full of fear. That is what surprised him. They were full of fire.
My name is Grace. I was taken from the road outside Ridgemont. I do not know why they chose me, but I will not stay broken by it.
You are not a prisoner here. When you want to leave, you leave. That door has no lock from my side, only from yours. You understand me?
The first days were hard to watch even from a distance. Two wounded animals circling each other.
He never asked her questions she was not ready to answer. He just put food on the table, heated water for her bath. One morning she found an old wool coat draped over the chair outside her room. It smelled like lavender and cedar. She asked him whose it was.
It belonged to my wife. She has been gone 15 years. I cannot tell you why I kept it, but I think maybe now I know the reason.
That is when Grace started to talk. Little pieces at first, like someone testing ice on a sea.
The people who raised me in Ridgemont just died. Among their things, I found a letter that said I was not their natural daughter.
Eli told me that when she said those words, Copper Ridge, his blood turned to ice water. That is his town. He knew right then that whatever road this girl was on, it was going to pass straight through everything he had spent 15 years. They left at first light. One old man who had sworn never to return, and one young woman chasing ghosts she could barely remember. Quite the pair.
I lost my wife Martha in a fire 15 years ago. I was in the barn when it started. By the time I reached the house, there was nothing left to save.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I told myself it was my fault because if it was my fault, then at least it meant something.
Random cruelty is harder to carry than earned.
The only memories I had from before the farm were three things. 3 small pieces of a life stolen from me.
I remember the smell of cinnamon bread baking. I remember a lullaby, but I can never finish the words.
Those 3 memories are all I have of who I was before. Everything else is blank.
Yes.
They arrived at Copper Ridge the next afternoon. Eli brought her straight to my door. He looked like a man walking into his own funeral, but he did it anyway. I opened the door and there was Eli Dawson, the hermit of the valley, standing on my porch with a young woman I had never seen before. I thought I was dreaming. I took her inside, gave her tea, gave her bread. She was tired, but she was polite. I dropped my teacup. It shattered on the floor, and I made some excuse about my old hands. That girl was the living image of Eleanor Tate, the sheriff's wife, the woman who died of heart. I grabbed Eli's arm after Grace went upstairs to rest, and I said to him, "Eli, that girl is the image of Eleanor Tate."
Eli came to see me that same evening. He walked into my office like a man carrying a coffin on his back. I had not seen him in 3 years. I asked him what the hermit of the valley wanted in my town. I was not kind about it. We had history, Eli and I, and none of it was warm. Harold, there is a young woman at Edna's boarding house. She came from Ridgemont looking for her real family.
Eleanor?
Yes, Harold, she has Eleanor's eyes.
Get out of my office. Get out and take your ghost stories with you. My daughter is dead, and my wife is dead, and I will not have some broken down rancher reopening graves.
Eli left without another word. He told me later he expected that reaction. But he also told me he saw something in Harold's. He saw hope. And for a man who built his entire life on the certainty that hope was gone, that tiny flicker was more. 3 hours later, Harold Tate walked through my front door. He said he was conducting a routine check on a stranger in town.
I called Grace downstairs, and she came down there in the light of my best lamp, and when Harold saw her face...
I am Sheriff Tate. I need to ask you some questions about your identity and your reason for being in my town. Please sit down.
He interrogated her like a suspect, not like a father, because admitting he might be a father again meant admitting he had given up on her 20 years ago. He asked about the letter, about the family in Ridgemont, about every detail she could remember. And then, without knowing why, Grace began to hum.
I know that song. I know every word of that song. My wife Eleanor sang it to our daughter every night for 6 years until the night we lost her.
How do you know that song?
Sleep now, little starling, the river knows your name.
Harold Tate, the man who had not shed a tear in 20 years, the hardest lawman in 3 counties.
The birthmark. She has the crescent birthmark on her neck.
Eleanor, it is her. 20 years and she has been alive.
What happened next was like watching a dead man come back to life and choose violence. Harold Tate became a force of nature with a badge.
He tore through 20 years of records in one night. Birth certificates, travel logs, witness statements from the original attack.
Seat. The body of my daughter was never recovered. I accepted the testimony of one man who said he witnessed the attack. I stopped looking for her because hoping was worse than grieving. I chose the certainty of loss over the agony.
I told Harold what I remembered. Virgil was the one who was at the attack 2 years ago. Virgil, one who said that...
Eli, you bought her from Virgil's auction. That means Virgil had her again. He kidnapped her a second time because she was getting close to the truth about Copper Ridge.
2 old men who had spent years avoiding each other suddenly found themselves on the same side of a fight.
Harold, I carried my guilt for 15 years thinking I caused Martha's death. You carried yours thinking you abandoned your daughter. We are 2 sides of the same broken coin.
They rode out together the next morning to find Virgil. Eli Dawson and Harold Tate, shoulder to shoulder on the road for the...
Virgil Meeks, you are under arrest for the kidnapping of Grace Tate 20 years ago and for her unlawful sale and trafficking in the present day.
Virgil tried to talk his way out. He always did. But this time there was no one left to buy his lies. What broke my heart most was watching Harold realize that he and Eli had been suffering the same wound all along.
The weeks that followed were not a fairy tale. You do not rebuild 20 lost years with a hug, and a happy ending.
I do not know how to be your daughter yet.
That's nothing but me.
I have been patient for 20 years without knowing what I was waiting for. I can be patient for 20 more if that is what...
Harold learned to bake cinnamon bread. Eleanor, the one he had kept in 20 years but never...
When I smelled that bread for the first time, I stopped right in the doorway, and closed my eyes.
Eli planned to go back to his ranch after everything was settled. Back to his dust and his silence and his peanuts.
Something opened in me when I saved that girl. Not a door I had nailed shut, Martha died.
Martha always said kindness was a language. I think I forgot how to speak it. But it turns out kindness is like riding a horse. Your body remembers.
I offered Eli a seat at my Sunday dinner table. Just a simple invitation. Nothing grand.
4 people at a table. A father learning his daughter's favorite color. A daughter learning her father's lullaby. To new beginnings.
Eli Dawson paid $2 for a stranger and found a family. Sometimes the smallest wager you will ever make.
He rode through dust and dying light, a man who lost his way. No voice to call him home at night, no reason left to stay. Then in a barn of chains and shame, he found what God had left. A girl without a face or name, sold off like common theft. $2 and a prayer, that's all he had to give. $2 and a prayer, and a reason left to live. Sometimes the broken ones are sent to find what we forgot, that kindness isn't something earned, it's all we ever got. Carried silence like a shield, her trust had turned to stone. But something in that empty field told her she wasn't alone. He gave her Martha's coat to wear, he gave her room to breathe. He didn't know that saving her was saving what he'd grieve. $2 and a prayer, that's all he had to give. $2 and a prayer, and a reason left to live. Sometimes the broken ones are sent to find what we forgot, that kindness isn't something earned, it's all we ever got. And in the sheriff's fading eyes, 20 years of tears broke through. A lullaby she couldn't finish was the only proof he knew. The table set, the candles burned, four people finally found that home is not a place you own, it's where your heart sits down. He didn't mean to be a hero, he was just a tired old man. But Martha whispered through the silence, be kind because you can. Now flowers grow beside the porch and Sunday dinner's warm. He traded 15 years of nothing for a seat out of the storm. $2 and a prayer, that's all it took to start. $2 and a prayer.